Okay, let's start. Um, Thank you, everyone who's joined the session live. Welcome. And thank you also for those watching the recordings. Again, the course has been defined to be self-paced, so you can follow it anytime you need. Again, if you join live, it's great because at the end, as always, I'm going to leave space for questions or feedback or any idea that you want to debate. But anyway, through the email, you will be receiving all the details. I hope you are able to follow the course so far. I've been answering all the questions received, so yeah, I hope you're enjoying it. We're almost halfway there. Well, a bit further than halfway there. Today, we're gonna talk about monetization and revenue streams. The framework will be what has to do with business models or business modeling, how to make money. Again, that's a brief reminder of what the course is all about. As you know, the sessions are going to be recorded. That's the email that you get. Any insight or any question, any feedback, whatever you need, please reach me there. Okay, I'm gonna get back to you as soon as possible, as always. That's the whole schedule. Now we're gonna cover this session. We already have seen the first one about entrepreneurial initiative. Then we talked about business opportunities and business ideas. Then we have the opportunity to listen to the experience of Julian Pivovar, head of innovation of Real Madrid. I hope you enjoyed the session and the learnings coming from someone that is not only in charge of innovation on such an institution as Real Madrid, but also has a past as an entrepreneur. And today we're going to talk about monetization and revenue streams, how to make money with our businesses and our ideas. And then we have a couple sessions more. One with Pierre Jonin, an entrepreneur right now, so he's going to share again what he is doing now next week. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the final session on the developing the the investment plan, what's to do with finance, numbers, etc. Sorry. Great. So remember that to complete the course, to get the certificate of participation, you have to fulfill your project that you will get, that you have to be working. I hope you're doing already by teams or individually based on the contents we've seen. Then, finding the business opportunity, trying to find the idea. Today, we're going to cover the business model, etc. And you have to deliver the PDF with the presentation of that project, okay? Then we're going to have a final event at the end of the course. You're going to get invited for those that finish the course, that deliver the project. You're going to have the opportunity to meet with us here in Madrid at some point. And then you're going to be competing between each other to get the title to the best project delivered in the course of this year, and you're going to get a reward not only on the graduation, but also you can get access to mentoring sessions for your project to make it real. So yeah, that's a brief reminder of what we saw in the first session, and yeah, I'm gonna move forward of today's content. Just getting back to what we saw in the previous sessions. First of all, as entrepreneurs, we need to find opportunities, problems, or needs that are not properly satisfied or not satisfied yet. So we need to look for those opportunities. Then we're going to build, create, find, ideate solutions, finding business ideas. That's what we saw the previous day. How to turn, okay, I found the problem. Now I need to find the solution, and I needed to turn it into a business. And we cannot forget that the main goal of this idea has to be that we need to satisfy customer needs. So that's why business opportunity is the first step to cover. Then find the solution to be able to make sure that we are covering people needs. So today we're gonna talk about two topics that are very important, which is how we're gonna get paid for what we do as entrepreneurs. We create an idea, we put it on the market, and we need to get paid. That has to do with revenue streams and business model, and also not only how clients are gonna pay for our solutions, but very important too, how we are going to make money. If you remember in the first session, we mentioned that ways to put money in our pockets as entrepreneurs, if we create a company, or if we create a business, not necessarily a company, could be a non-profit, could be a different institution, but running a business, providing solutions to a certain problem, marketable problem, how we're going to get paid out of it. Remember that mainly two ways: by owning a business, getting the dividends. The profit that the company generates belongs to the shareholders, the owners of the business. Then we also can sell the company, sell those shares, the ownership of the company. And the third one, which is included for all the projects that are not companies, like self-employed, etc., which is a salary. You can get a salary out of it. So we need to differentiate how the business is making money. That's what we call business, the business plan, and then how we are going to make money personally, how we are going to transfer some of this money to our pockets, and that's very important. So let's get to it. Revenue streams, pricing strategies, and other KPIs to define our business model. So we need to think about the value proposition. First of all, what's the value proposition? It's this concept is very easy to understand. It's the value that you are creating, the proposition that you're proposing to the market. What's the idea of why? The question will be why your product or service is valuable to the target market that you want to satisfy their needs. Why is this valuable? Because it's faster, because it's cheaper, because it's better, because it's more fancy, because it's more innovative, because it's closer, because it's why is this valuable, and what's the value you are creating? That's the value proposition. We have to be able to explain our value proposition in something like I don't know, 15 seconds, no more than that. What does your company do? You have to be able to answer that question through the value proposition of your business. What do you do, and why is that valuable for your target market? And then you need to understand your value proposition in the context of the market, getting into the competitive advantage. What do you do better than others? So what's the value you're creating, and why is this valuable compared to others? What do you do better than your competition? Sometimes we think like, okay, we're building something so innovative that we have no existing competition. That's fine. But anyway, if people is not dying out of the need you want to satisfy, something out there is satisfying that need. So we need to know why is your thing better than the existing one, okay? Even if it's something they do manually, or there's no product at all, you need to explain what's the value you're creating and why is this better than anything else, okay? Once you have this, which is a bit abstract in somehow, but you find ways to measure this value and how to activate the competitive advantage, not to get in the theoretical world, but to get into the action world, which is the main goal of this course. Again, the question, how we are going to get paid and make money out of it? We need to define, first of all, revenue streams, different ways on how the client is going to pay for your product or service. There are many different ways, many different revenue streams, okay? And once you have the list of different revenue streams, it could be like paying a subscription, buying the product, renting the product, having ads when using the product, advertising. So there are many different potential revenue streams. So we need to make a list of all of them. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of different revenue streams we can have in our businesses. But once we have the list of potential revenue streams, we need to define the pricing strategy. We need to define each line or each revenue stream, how we're going to charge that specifically. Okay, if you say you're going to rent the product, you need to define what's the price of renting the product. If you're going to sell the product, that's a different revenue stream. Selling and renting, two different revenue streams. You can have both. So selling the product will have a price, and renting the product will have a different price. That's what I meant by pricing strategies. So you have revenue streams, a lot of them, or maybe just one. Normally we start with one or two. Later on, we can keep adding new revenue streams. But at least if you have one revenue stream, you need to define the pricing strategy. Maybe it can be one product, one price, one revenue stream. So easy. We start like that. Okay, we sell football balls, and then we sell this product, and that's the only thing we sell. We have one price, one revenue stream. That's it. But normally we have different revenue streams with different strategies, etc. So we need to set that. Okay, we need to think about it. And the way to do it for me would be finding or building a business case. What's a business case? Okay, who's the client? Why is it paying? How much? When? How? In which scenario? And then using business cases for yourself and to explain that to others, I think it's very easy to understand. So try to find your business case like the success story, something like the storytelling you use for others to understand this. Okay, I'm gonna have a user that is downloading my app, is not paying for that app. Then we'll using it. We'll have two options: they go free and have some ads, or maybe it's paying a subscription to be ads free and having more features. Okay, now you have built a business case. So that person is downloading the app, is deciding to go one way or the other. So using business cases will help you understand the different paths that the client can take, and also for you to explain to others and for you to define the strategy. And talking about pricing is something that, in my opinion, is very undervalued in terms of training. We're talking about entrepreneurship. We talk about many things. Many people is asking me about financing, how to get money from a bank, how to get money from investors, or how to make a marketing strategy, all these things. But it's not so common. Talking about pricing, and to me it's essential, and I'm gonna tell you why. Imagine that I have a company, and I sell these products. Okay, I sell football balls, and then I have two different products. I have one ball that is so unique that we use to play the final games in in some of the most important competitions in the world, and the other one is very low quality, just for kids to train at home, etc. And this is the picture of both of them. Okay, and the only extra information that you have is the retail price, the selling price. In this case is $19, and in this case is 210. If I ask you which one of these is the top quality and which one is the low quality, which one would you say? Probably you say, okay, but to me, they're exactly the same. Visually, I have no logos, I have no quality, but there's only one extra insight that is telling you something, right? The price. Probably all of you will say, okay, this has to be the high quality, even though you didn't have the opportunity to take it, to watch it, to touch it, to play with it. Why? Because price talks about value. We perceive high value, and if we perceive something very valuable, probably you will be more open to pay a higher price. So value has to do with price. So that's why pricing strategies is so important and is so connected to our value proposition, because the way to tell the world what do you think is the value of your products is the price you set. So that's why it's so important thinking carefully about the pricing strategy, not only the revenue streams, because finding revenue streams is so easy. Today, I'm going to give you like 10 or 12 or 15 different examples, even more, on how to generate revenues. But how to define in a price, that's very complicated. It's very complex. So I'm going to give you a framework for you to use when setting prices. It's very obvious. We have a maximum price, the highest price we can charge, which is when we have no demand. We can keep raising the price. That's something we learned in economics. If some of you have studied business or economics, that's something that is called the demand rule, which is if you raise the price at some point, you have no clients. The higher the price, the lower the amount of clients you get. But sometimes having less clients with higher price is better for you. You will make more money out of it. Why? Because if you have fewer clients, less and smaller amount of clients, we can dedicate more to them. You can treat them better because they are paying a higher price. Okay, sometimes we prefer to raise the price to have some clients out of the business because the value perceived for them is not high enough. So then you focus on the typical example would be luxury products, right? So if you go to a Ferrari store, they're going to treat you very personally, and they're going to take all the time on the world with you, etc. Why? Because their price is so high compared to the rest of the products. So that's why they can dedicate fully to you, because you're going to pay the same amount of money that a lot of clients are going to pay for the products in a different competitor. So going high has a limit, no demand, but still we can go very high, and until we reach to no demand, there's a lot of space. If we go down, the lowest would be no margin, meaning that you make no money. The minimum price would be zero, giving things for free. Of course, this is not going to happen. It makes no sense from a business perspective. But the minimum is not going to be zero because nothing's free, right? If you build the ball, or if you build any kind of product or service, there will be the minimum, which is the cost of manufacturing or creating this product. So that's the lowest. And in between, you're going to find competition. Competition is going to be somewhere between the highest and the lowest price, obviously. So you need to find how you're going to approach the market, taking into account this. What's the maximum price you can charge? What's the minimum? And you need to know that the minimum, the cost of the product or service you're selling, the highest, when you're going to reach no clients. And in between, you have to be there. And on the other hand, okay, between the minimum and the maximum, you're going to find the competition. How do we approach the competition? First of all, we need to think the cost-based approach on pricing strategies, taking into account what's the cost of manufacturing or creating the product, and the margin or the markup, the amount of money I want to make on top of the cost. And again, we can go on value perceived, value based. This is based on perception. How can we do that? It's a bit complicated. We have to do focus groups, we have to do market research, you have to do a lot of A/B testing, you have a lot of different methodologies to understand what's the real value somebody is willing to pay. And you're gonna have to dedicate time and probably money to get those insights. It's not obvious. It's not, okay, that's very valuable. And sometimes the main mistake we make is that we set the prices based on my individual perception on the value. I think this is very valuable, so I set the price very high. But if nobody else is finding the same value, nobody will be willing to pay. So you need to be based on the perception of your target clients. And then, as I said, competition. You need to define at least one of these three strategies. Matching. You're going to be equal to the rest of the companies. Sometimes we'll say, I won't recommend that, right? Going, oh, this one missing, very important. Sorry for that. There's a mistake in this slide. I'm gonna add in a minute. So matching, going with the same price. Penetration, the strategy of penetration in a market, getting into a market to go with lower prices to attract new clients. And once those clients are with you, you start raising the prices little by little. So at some point, you're gonna go even higher than the competition, but you do it smoothly, right? So that's penetration. You get into the market, you attract clients. Once the clients are aware of what you do and they know what you do and they're very happy with what you do, you start raising the prices, but you feel comfortable because they are not going to leave, at least not all of them. You can go premium. You can go, okay, I'm going to be between these lowest and highest range of prices, but I want to separate from the rest. I'm going to sell my products and I want to be the most expensive, the highest price. I won't say expensive because that's subjective. I'm going to go with the highest price. Some people would say it's very expensive, and some people would say it's cheap. Cheap or expensive are individual perception on the value based according to the price. So premium will say go far away from the rest. And there's one left. Sorry for that. There's a mistake on the slide. I forgot to add it, which would be going lower price. Go cheaper. You're gonna be cheaper than the rest. Sometimes that's the I would say it's the most common approach for most business I heard mainly in the academic world. Like, okay, I'm gonna do something that is cheaper than the competition because that's a strategy very obvious. If it's cheaper, people will be willing to buy it. But if it's only a little bit cheaper, like, okay, a 10% cheaper, 10%, sometimes I don't think it's going to be enough to change anything. At least if I'm happy with a solution that I've been paying for many years and you come with a new solution and it's only 10% cheaper, depending on what's the price, what's the value for me, maybe it's not enough. What I try to say when talking about pricing strategies, if you're going to go low with the price, think about 10x. 10 times cheaper, which is a lot. It's crazy. Or if you want to go premium, think about a product that is 10 times better. So use the 10 times cheaper or 10 times better to find if you're doing enough to go with an aggressive strategy. Of course, not all the businesses has to follow these guidelines, but I'm trying to generate some sensitivity with you. If you go with a price that is low but not low enough, probably you're not gonna drive clients to your solution. They're gonna remain where they are. And in some cases, we are forced or we decide to use dynamic prices, prices that are set real time or prices that are negotiated. For example, if you sell cars, you're gonna negotiate one by one. If you sell sponsorships, right? If you have a club and a sport property and you want to sell sponsorships, all of the clubs, all of the sport properties, normally we set our presentation and we have like different prices, the gold, the premium, the silver, whatever. But at the end of the day, in most cases, you're going to have to sit down with the brand, negotiate the activations, negotiate the strategy, the amount of money you're going to put on the table, the amount of the impact, etc. So you're going to negotiate to set the price, right? And in some cases, it's real time. It's not that you're going to negotiate one by one. But for example, if you have advertising, right? If you have advertising in a company, we're going to cover in a minute. Those prices are set real time based on the demand, based on the it's like a betting system, right? The more people is willing to pay, the price will go higher. So in some cases, real time prices will affect you directly. Okay, so these four are different ways, not different strategies, but different ways to set the strategy for your business. Understanding the cost, understanding the value perceived, comparing the competition. Remember to add here the lower price, okay, going low with the price, cheaper, and then the dynamic prices. One thing to take into account, some products or services are very affected by promotions. What does it mean? If you sell something that you will need to have a very high discount, for example, on Black Friday, on Christmas, on St. Valentine's Day, um, if you have something that is gonna be affected by promos, you need to take that into account when setting the prices. Why? Because if you set the price very close to the cost, we are going to cover in a minute. When those promos get to the when they get the moment to set the promos, you won't have margin enough. You don't have a space for the promos, and you won't be able to compete. Some products are very cyclic. You sell a lot during Christmas, but you don't sell a lot, like toys, for example. You sell a lot of toys in Christmas, but you don't sell that many after Christmas, right? So if you have to push and you have to fight on those moments when sometimes we need to do a lot of promos, you need to take that into account when setting the prices. So the strategy is not it's not a one-time strategy. It's for the whole year, for the whole season. It's not the same selling the tickets when you're. It has to do with the real-time pricing, right? Another example is the ticketing in companies. Sometimes we set the price of the tickets based on the game. Of course, it's not going to be the same price if you're about to win the league than if you're out of any opportunity to win it, right? So depending on that, you can set the price real time. So the promos can affect that. If you say, I don't know, if you want to sell to generate promotions for any specific reason, again, you need to take that into account when setting the prices. According to this, the cost base, the margin, and markup, I want to go deeper on the concept of margin. Probably based on what I said, all of you know what it is, but I think it's very important understanding that margin is the difference between the price that the client is paying minus the variable cost per unit. What's the variable cost per unit? What it took to you to create the product or to provide the service, whatever it is. If it's a service, you need to account maybe the hours, or maybe you need to account the materials you're using, whatever. When selling a product, it's very simple, right? The cost of manufacturing, the cost of product of goods sold, the cost of what you're selling, right? So that's the margin. What that we'll call the contribution margin. What I generate in terms of money with each sale that I make. So normally we say we show the margin as a percentage, the percentage of money that will stay with you after generating a sale. Take into account that this money is not going to your pocket yet, because that's only the margin, price minus variable cost. You still have to pay for other things. If you ask for a loan, you're going to have to pay for the loan. If you have an office, you have to pay for the office. If you have people working in marketing, you're going to have to pay the salaries after getting this money to your pocket. Remember, you need to get to the profit. We didn't talk about profit yet. We're going to talk in the last session, but just for you to have a brief idea of this, right? So margin, very important. The bigger the margin, the better for the business, right? So two ways to increase the margin: by decreasing the variable cost per unit, being better, being more efficient on what we build, of course, and on the other one, increasing the value perceived, meaning that you can raise the price. So the bigger the price, the bigger the margin. So that's at the end of the day what we're trying to do. Just to have a very simple example, imagine that we sell these key rings. That's the variable cost per unit. The cost of the ball, the cost of the chain, of the ring, sums up 70 cents, and the price, the selling price is $1, is €1. So in this case, €1 minus 0.7 will be 0.3 euros, meaning that from each keyring that I sell, I'm generating 30 cents for my company, not my pocket, for the company, for the business, right? In this case, we say we have a margin of a 30%, right? So in this case, when selling products, it's a bit easier, right? Because we have the cost of manufacturing, the price, and it's easy to match the margin. But what happens when we sell services? In this case, I'm going to use an example of a company that I made up. It's just for the example. It's an activation company, a company that works with brands in sponsorship activations. They do like these activities on the stadiums with virtual reality, augmented reality, etc. So this company is providing like a consultancy service, right? So I build a case. What I told you when setting the prices, build a case, because not all the events are the same. Not all the clients are the same. So we need to have at least a business case, an example. In this case, getting to the total revenue. This company says, okay, on average, each event that we make as an activation agency, we're going to have a setup fee of 55,000 euros, meaning that I'm going to have a team of people dedicating hours, building the proposal, having the material, etc. It's going to take 55,000. That's the price that I'm going to set. And then we're going to have a management fee, meaning that I'm going to have one executive or one director of my company taking care of the whole event, and it's going to take 15,000. Okay. And then we decided to set another revenue stream. Remember, we have now 3 different revenue streams. The first one is the setup fee, the amount of money I'm going to charge my client to start working with the project. Then we have the management fee. Once the project Once the client says go, we're going to have a management fee, somebody that is going to be taking care of the project, the second revenue stream with the pricing strategy we're seeing now. And then we have the third revenue stream, which is revenue share, meaning that we're going to get a piece of every dollar you generate, in this case, on ticketing, for example. So if we expect to generate 1 million euros in ticketing, my revenue share will be 3%, meaning that 3% of all what you generate on that event in ticketing will go to my pocket. So in this case, we're going to generate it 100,000, meaning 55,000 for the setup fee, 15,000 for the management fee, and 30,000 on the 3% based times the revenue per event, totaling up 100%. So the average price will be 100,000. It doesn't mean that all my clients are going to be 100,000, but I need to know at least one business case to understand the model, to understand the company, right? Because maybe this company has clients with 100,000, some of them will be 50,000, and some of them will be 500,000. But we don't know exactly because it's service-based. It depends on each client. The price is negotiated. So we have the different revenue streams, but all of them will be, some of them will be negotiated and some of them will be real time. I'm not going to decide the amount of ticketing. I'm going to push harder to get a higher amount of ticketing, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be real time. Depending on what happened on the event, I'm going to get more money or less money, right? And then that's the revenue generated on average, as an example. And then on the other hand, we're going to have the total cost. In this case, we have we're going to need 10 people working 8 hours. That's an average for this event. 8 hours, that's the fee they're going to get paid. So the salary will be 5,200. And then we have, I made a budget. That's a budget. I made up this budget, like printing services, PR and social media, influencer, merchandising, infrastructure, whatever. So the amount, the variable cost. So those are expenses that I'm not gonna have if I have no events, if I have no clients. But if I do, I'm gonna have to pay for them. So that's gonna be the variable cost. So at the end, the average price will be 100,000. The variable cost will be 25,000. So the margin will be around 75,000. So 75% in this case. Of course, I made the numbers to simplify. Okay, very rounded. So in this case, the contribution margin will be 75%, meaning that from each activation that I made for a client, on average of 100,000 euros, I'm going to be generating 75 for my company. And I'm going to use that money to pay the rest of the salaries, to pay the rent of the office, to pay materials, to pay the loan with the bank, whatever I had to pay. Okay. So having this concept in mind, the margin, now another one that is essential when setting prices is the customer lifetime value, which is the net value generated by a client's revenue. And in this case, it's very important when we have recurrent clients that are going to come to buy my products or services, not once, but recurrently on time. So they are going to come again and again to buy my product. The typical case would be a subscription, right? So in this case, how do we calculate the customer lifetime value? Would be the average revenue times the recurrence times the customer lifetime. Meaning, if you're going to pay a certain amount of money for a certain period of time, we need to calculate the whole value of that client. Why? Because it's not only that the price they pay for one time. If you're going to have a client that is recurrent, when setting the prices, maybe you prefer to have a different strategy, taking into account that you want this client to come back again. So I'm going to use the two examples, one which is subscription based, okay, something that you pay to use, and another one that is a service based. And how do we calculate it? Imagine that we have a service based, for example, a physiotherapy office, right? You provide physiotherapy services. It could be, you can apply this to lawyers or to accountants or to nutritionists, whatever the business that you have. That's a service base. What you provide is your knowledge, right? So in this case, imagine that the price for each session, I made these numbers up. Please don't go after me saying that it's too high or too low. It's just for the example. Okay, in this case, imagine that you're paying 50 euros and on average, each client is coming twice a month. Okay, 2 times 50 euros. And you calculated for this case, of course, you don't know when starting a company from the ground. You know when you have been running the company for a while, but you can find proxies, you can find reports, or you can find information coming from other businesses. But let's get to the example. If we have a client that is coming twice a month, and I estimate that the client is going to stay with me for at least 3 years, the value of that client is not the 50 euros is paying each time that client comes. We can now know the customer lifetime value. Based on these numbers, we will know 50 euros times 2 sessions per month times 12 months during three years will be 3,600 euros. That's the customer lifetime value. That's the value that I expect this from a client to generate. Why is this so important? Because later on when we think about how much money do I want to invest in marketing to get a client, if we only take into account the 50 euros, probably it's not obvious for us to invest in marketing. But once we know the value of the client is 3.6 thousand, then it changes. Of course, you have to wait for 3 years to generate, but you know that the client is not the one-time client. It's not the once coming and never coming again. So most business owners, what we do is trying to retain our clients and to turn our business models into recurrent business models. The typical subscription business model, Netflix is a subscription base. So if a user is paying 15.99 euros a month, and on average is going to stay 24 months, the lifetime, meaning that one client might stay for a few months and other clients will be for 5 years. On average, we estimate that the average lifetime will be 24 months. Okay, made this number up just to simplify, but in this case, the customer lifetime value will be 384 euros. Okay, so on average, each client that I bring to my model, to my company, on average, getting to know again that some of them will leave sooner and some of them will stay longer. On average, they will generate 384 euros. So it's not the 15.99. And that's very important to understand some things like what the picture is showing there. Why Netflix decided to invest 60 million on broadcasting. That was the first real-time event in Netflix. Very important or very interesting for our business, for our industry. The fight again from Jake Paul against Mike Tyson. If you're, I don't know if you are aware of the event. It was a historic event, the most watched fight in history at that moment, and it was like a retired historical boxing as Mike Tyson and a boxer that is actually a YouTuber turned into a boxer, right? But so Netflix decided to invest 60 million on that fight. 60 million. What's the point? And the thing is that to watch the fight, you only needed to be subscribed on Netflix, so paying 15.99 a month. So it was not pay-per-view. They were breaking the rules for the fight for the first time. It's not that you needed to pay a lot of money to watch the fight. Only becoming a Netflix subscriber would be enough. So 60 million only for 15.99. Wait a minute. They generated 1.43 million subscribers. If you turn this into money, if you take into account the customer lifetime value, that's a lot of money. But only taking this into account, that's enough. But if not, at least if you actually want to know the real value generated, is not the one-time subscription. Of course, some clients decided to subscribe and then go, but some of them will stay. Not the 1.43 million. Of course, not all of them will stay, but on average, most of them will stay because Netflix will do great trying to convince them to stay. Maybe trying to show them other fights or other films related to boxing or some other sports or some other documentaries, etc. But they're going to try to retain them and to turn the value not only in the 16 euros a month, but to turn it into the 340 and 84. So that's why we try to retain clients, to make them stay with us, to extend the lifetime value. Okay. So when setting the prices, understanding the recurrence, the expected life of my client will affect me a lot. Sometimes that's why in service-based companies like this, we want to make promotions to bring clients. Okay, the first session will be cheaper, or maybe the first session will be free. I'm not recommending that. It's just an example. So if you want to give one for free, it's because if you come, you see that I'm very valuable, that the service that I'm providing is very good. Maybe you want to stay later and you're going to stay for a long time. So the value generated after a while is going to be way higher than the 50 bucks that you're getting in the first session. So that's why sometimes using promos will help us when we have like this one. It's not a promo, it's a campaign itself. It's like saying to the world that I want to get into the sports industry, but they invested, the bet was 60 million. So it's not a tiny thing. Okay, so having that in mind, revenue stream, pricing strategies, etc. Now it's time for us to talk about business models in general. So what we are going to do now is I'm going to try to share with you as many examples as possible that I can find of revenue streams and pricing strategies of companies that I know. Okay. From now on, I'm going to give you a brief definition of what a business model is. But what I want to give you is, as I said, examples for you to inspire for your businesses, for your ideas. So if you're stuck, okay, you have the idea, but you don't know how to make money with it, I'm going to give you a lot of examples so you can adapt or you can use in your company. Okay. So get into the business model. That's the theoretical definition, a story that tells what the company does, the definition of the value proposition for customers, and it defines the profit formula, the architecture of income or expenses that sustain the company. So at the end of the day, when we define what a company is, it's a manufacturing unit that acquires inputs and transforms them into outputs of higher value. Okay, I acquire inputs and I transform them into outputs of higher value, products and services. Higher value, meaning that the price people is willing to pay is going to be higher than the cost that it took me to manufacture, to create, right? It makes sense. So that's what we call the margin. So the bigger the value perceived, the bigger the margin, the bigger the amount of money we can make. That's what we're talking about when referring to business model. So that's the value we are going to capture from the value created. So the bigger the price, the bigger the value perceived, the bigger the value created, and the smaller the cost of manufacturing will be the value we are capturing, the difference between the cost of my products and the value perceived, the price. But that's again the margin. So that's a way to get it. So that's a list of different business models we're going to cover today: commerce, provision of services, advertising, intermediation, freemium, and with different subcategories. I'm going to start with the biggest one in sports probably, and nowadays very fancy and everybody's talking about it, which is venues. And as an example, I'm going to use one venue that probably all of you are aware, and if you are not, probably you are not in the industry at all, which is of course the Bernabeu. Many people is talking about it, like a big investment, a lot of money on the stadium. But what's the purpose? What's the goal? Just to have a fancy stadium to win more games? Of course, what has to do with sports is very important. Let's make a list of the different revenue streams that the club has generated, new ways to make money, and then we can. Not today, but we can go bigger with the different pricing strategies. But let's think about the different revenue streams. Of course, what has to do with the sports is the place where you play. So anything that has to do with rights, right? Probably will stay. But let's think about sponsorship. All of the sponsorships, not only the ones that you have on the t-shirts, right, that are going to be on the screen, but all the sponsorship that will take place inside the stadium, okay, for the 80 plus thousand people that's going to be watching the game, all the different activations you're going to find there. How much money is that generating? Okay, sponsorships. And outside the stadium, one of the things that the Real Madrid is doing now is the lighting of outside to try to generate more spaces, more inventory to sell advertising, to sell sponsorships out there on the stadium. Okay, events. When talking about events, we have a lot of different range of events. Many people are saying, okay, now Real Madrid is not able to have concerts. What? That's the worst thing ever. It's just one kind of an event. It's a very interesting one, probably in terms of money. Why? Because they rent the whole space. But some people think, like when you see the numbers of Miley Cyrus or Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift tour, etc., it's millions for her, but it's not millions for the venues where she is performing. The amount of money is made by the artists and the producers, not that much about the venue. So you're losing just one kind of a client. It's a big one because they rent the whole stadium, so it probably is a good renting, it's a good price for renting, but it's not the worst thing ever. It's a bad thing, of course, but it's not the only revenue stream. Now, probably they may generate more money when renting the different spaces at the same time, because you can rent a VIP area, you can rent the floor, you can rent a lot of moments. So the idea is having events every day of the year. So the renting opportunities are really, really, really high. Not only corporate events like congresses, etc. They rent. I mean, of course, they have other sports coming, like NFL is hosting a game here, or different events. The other day we have here Mutua Madrid Open. They had their activation with a training pitch of tennis. So many different ways to use the same space. It's in the center of Madrid, so there's a lot of opportunity. So renting it, sponsorships, of course, ticketing, right? The more people that fits in, the more tickets you can sell. But in ticketing, we can split into different categories. We have the regular ticketing. Of course, we have the socios, which is people paying to get access to the stadium. Getting access to the stadium nowadays is something very complicated. So having socios is one revenue stream, but people paying tickets, regular tickets. Incoming, I mean, other teams coming, but you have all of the different ranges in VIP ticketing. Real Madrid is generating way more money only with a few VIP tickets than with the whole capacity of the stadium. So VIP, not only VIP ticketing plus VIP experiences. If you get to VIP experiences, you have different revenue streams with a wide range of different pricing strategies. You have VIP boxes, VIP experiences. We have catering. You have fancy places where to stay, food and beverage, etc. Food and beverage, again, food and beverage. In Spain, for example, it's regulated. You cannot drink any alcohol inside the stadium. When you compare the numbers of food and beverage, for example, between Spain or Europe and the US, the numbers are very low, and it has to do with the kind of things you can consume. For example, when the NFL game was hosted in the event, they were able to drink beer. Many people here did not understand in Spain why, when watching an American football game, you can drink beer, but when watching La Liga, you cannot. It has to do with the regulations of sports in Spain. So the stadium is ready to serve beer almost everywhere in the stadium, not for the football games, but for any other sports or any other events, of course, concerts, events of other kind. Okay, what else do we have? Restaurants. The stadium has up to 7 different restaurants, and they have a licensing revenue stream. So they give a license for people to rent it. So they are paying a fixed amount of money to have the opportunities, like renting any space somewhere in the city. So they pay a fee. And some of the restaurants, they remain open during games, and some others, like 2 or 3 hours before the game, they close and they turn the restaurant into a VIP area. You have a bigger VIP inventory to sell to others. Okay, so restaurants is another revenue stream, and other licensing some other spaces. For example, the store. You have the store, which is another revenue stream. According to the state, I don't know how many do we have. I think we are going up to 7 different revenue streams with one venue. They said, okay, the VIPs, the restaurants, the store, okay, selling your products. Of course, Real Madrid is selling a lot of products online and through other stores, but the store is a very big one in a very centric place in the city, and it generates a massive amount of sales. You also have the museum. The visit to the stadium is the second most visited stadium in Madrid. We have El Prado, which is one of the most important art museums in the world, and Real Madrid is the second by people, the first one by tickets. It's the museum that sells more tickets in the city of Madrid, generating a good amount of money for the club. What else? What else? What else? I think probably there's something missing. Well, I move forward. I'm gonna move forward. In this case, there's one very interesting revenue stream that is not used in the Bernabeu, and it's very mentioned in some cases, which is the naming rights. You can give a name to your stadium and get money out of it, and the amount of money that people is willing to pay is a lot of money. And in this case, Real Madrid decided not to sell the naming rights. Other teams did. If you see now the names of the stadium, most of them have a corporate name that goes with the naming right. They paid millions to place the name, not only the title, because it's going to be mentioned in every broadcasting, in every media, in every media conference, in the name of the stadium, in every press release. And in this case, it remains as Bernabeu. It's no longer Santiago Bernabeu completely, is Bernabeu, so they decided to remain the name for the club, something that maybe in the future changes, I don't know, but in some of the venues you may find this as another very relevant revenue stream. Okay, let's jump into other business models. Playtomic. If you don't know the company, Playtomic is a platform that provides it's a community for paddle players and tennis players to not only book spaces where to play, but to organize games. You can go to the app and find people. Okay, I want to play paddle somewhere close to me, and they give you opportunities. Or maybe you have a group of friends and you're looking for a venue. Okay, in this case, the obvious business model will have to do with the percentage they charge you on the reservation, because you pay through the app and the app gets a percentage that is not getting to the venue. Okay, 2%. Normally it goes between 1.5 and a 5% or 10%, depending on the company. Then they have a subscription for the venues. So if you have a paddle pitch and you want to upload it to the platform, you may have to pay. I said 100 a month. I don't know exactly the prices because it changes dynamically, but it depends on the amount of pitches that you have. And then users can have also a premium subscription, right? So that's the obvious one. That's the obvious business model. These 3 revenue streams: the commission they get on the bookings, the subscription on the venues, and then the subscription of the users, that instead of paying a 2%, you pay to be able to book sooner, to have more features, and you don't get charged the 2% of the games. That's for heavy users, people that are using the app like a lot. So in this case, it's not only that, but also the data they're generating. In this case, they're acquiring a lot of different companies because they have the insights where paddle is being played. So they have a lot of intelligence. They know they can drive demand to one place or the other because they have all the insights. They have the data. So when talking about data businesses, that's another example. They know where a new venue might be demanded, where a new venue may have an opportunity, or they can even buy a venue and exploit it because they know they're gonna feed the place with a lot of users. So the data they're generating is very valuable, and there's a lot of money out of it. And sometimes these digital businesses, they generate intelligence, not that much for the digital ecosystem itself, but also they transfer some of this value to the real world. In this case, could be real estate. Like, okay, I'm gonna use the data of Playtomic to buy or build a new pitch, a new paddle pitch, or a new paddle club because I know there's a lot of demand there. So there's a lot of money out of this data. Okay, we're talking about broadcasting, global audiences, broadcasting, fan engagement, retail, social media. We mentioned some of the examples. What has to do with broadcasting? Now the broadcasting industry is being fragmented, meaning that not just a few players are dealing with the broadcasting rights. Now, one example is what we mentioned, Netflix. Netflix jumping into the broadcasting ecosystem. It was not there a few months ago, and now it's a new broadcaster. The best way to understand what's happening with broadcasting probably will be taking a look at the NFL, what they're doing, how do they sell their broadcasting rights, and why are they generating that much money on this. And if you see, that is one of the biggest elements nowadays in every competition, how they deal to get better payments, better deals in what has to do with broadcasting, because it's not only the big players. Now we have a lot of broadcasters, YouTubers, Instagrammers generating different spaces, and we're gonna use an example now. What has to do with fan engagement? Sometimes it's a field that you guys love. I heard about fan engagement business ideas every year here in the school, in the MBA, and also in this course. I think it's interesting, but it's a field that is very competed. Many people is trying together, and sometimes the obvious way is trying to go and charge the user for what they're doing. And I think that sometimes the user is not who's gonna pay. Sometimes it's the club who's willing to pay to provide something to the user, so that the user go to the stadium, or so that user buys merchandising. And sometimes are the brands willing to pay to impact those fans. So when talking about fan engagement, the main thing will be, okay, improving the experience of somebody that is a fan and a sports fan, but you need to understand where is the value being created when having a fan engaged. Having a fan engaged means that the fan is closer to the business, so the value is not only in the pocket of the fan. Sometimes it's in the pocket of other stakeholders like the club, the brands, or somewhere else. So think about it openly. Retail, we're gonna cover that in a minute. What has to do with retail, selling, for example, merchandising or products or different ways to do it. Social media, we're gonna cover that in a minute too. Okay. That example we mentioned. I'm gonna go with the Kings League, the competition that Ibai Llanos and Gerard Piqué created a few years ago. The way they're monetized is so much fun because they're using the old way to make money. Broadcasting is a tiny little thing, but at the end it's content. It has to do with advertising. They have the typical sponsors. What's the main thing? What's the main value proposition for them? They have a lot of data. They know exactly how many people is watching the game, where are they coming from, what's the age of that people. So they have a lot of data because they're digital based. So they use that data to connect with the brands. Okay, great. So they use that data to connect with the brands. So if you take a look at this, if you look what these brands are doing, or what are the products or services they're selling to others, probably they will be young people. Young people. Why? Because Kings League is a product, entertainment product that has been created for young audiences. So probably these brands are willing to pay more to stay there compared to other spaces. Of course, we have Spotify, which is the sponsor of, for example, Barcelona, right? So they want to go to Barcelona, but why do they want to go to Kings League? Because they have a niche. It's smaller, the amount of audience, but actually it's not that small, but it's growing. But they have a lot of data, a lot of insights, and of course they have different revenue streams. Not only the native advertising, what is included in the competition, which has to do with the logos, the T-shirts, the what's included in the broadcasting, in the screen itself, but also what has to do with the branded content. People talking about a specific product, or people talking about what's happening, brands being included into the content itself, like in a more natural way. One thing that I want to point out on this joint venture between Gerard Piqué and Ibai Llanos, in my opinion, it has to do, well, actually, it's more based on Ibai Llanos, but it's the knowledge of this joint venture somehow, is what they're doing with La Velada del Año. It's a boxing fight. Um, it's so much fun because there are no pro boxing fighting. There are no pro boxers fighting. So they're just YouTubers, broadcasters, people that has a big audience, and they fight against each other. So what they created is a product that is so interesting because they generate a lot of expectation before the event, because they select the fighters and they train them for a year. So you will get to see how the fighters are training for the whole year and all the content generated about it. So they generate not only a lot of expectations for the D-Day, but they generate a lot of content around it. So what they did great is not only connecting millions of people, they have more people watching a fight with no pro boxers fighting at all than pro boxing fights in Las Vegas, for example. They have more people watching this fight. Why? Because they brought the audiences together with the fighters, because the fighters were broadcasters and YouTubers, and their audiences wanted to watch. So what they did great is not only generating money through the advertising or through the subscribers, they also were able to take this to the real world. They brought people literally inside the stadium, what you see in the picture. So they sold out. So they made the first velada was in Barcelona. Then they have in a venue there in not that big, but they did it in the Metropolitano, the Atlético Stadium. They also did that in Bernabeu, and now it's going somewhere else. But the thing is that they're bringing the digital audience to the real world. So now they're making money through ticketing, food and beverage, etc. So they're doing great. They're generating a lot of different revenue streams based on one value proposition, which is you want to watch these famous people fighting. So it's something not that smart if you look at it that way, but everything they build around, to me, it's incredible what they did. Okay, getting on the other side. This is the company of Gerard Piqué. So let's bring the different revenue stream and pricing strategies for service companies that are providing services. So in this case, we're going to use the hours, money per hours dedicated, per paid or by results. So let's get into that. And we can use it in a consultancy service, in an agency service, but also in anything that is service-based, physiotherapy, nutritionism, sports law, or law of any kind, consultancy, anything that's service-based. In this case, there are a few ways to think about your business model. First of all, how much money do you want to make? Very important. Again, if you want to be self-employed, it's not the same if you want to build a company that is going to go IPO, or that you want to make millions out of it, right? So it's different. And what's the value of your hours? Because if you're going to be involved personally, what's the value of those hours? So it will take us to the honoraries per hour. So how much do we charge per hour dedicated? And that's simple. I'm going to find the amount of money. I'm going to give you an example of how to get to this number. So we set a price revenue stream that is the revenue stream will be the amount of time dedicated to my client, and the pricing strategy will be the euros per hour dedicated. Okay, then we can have monthly fees. In this case, normally what we do is we decrease the cost per hour, but we have a subscription based. Why is that so interesting? Because it's recurrent. We know that we're going to have this month, next month, and probably in 3 months from now, we're going to still be generating money. In the other hand, if we only sell hours individually, we don't know how many hours we're going to sell next month. So having a monthly fee or a quarterly fee or yearly fee, whatever, if it's a fee, if it's closer to a subscription model. Okay. And also, we mentioned previously the revenue share. We're gonna get a piece of whatever we're doing. So if we are selling you how, if I'm telling you, I don't know, how to do great on your sponsorship strategy, okay, I'm gonna charge you hours dedicated, or maybe I'm gonna charge you a certain amount of money to work with you the whole year, or maybe I can combine a few of them. Maybe I can have a revenue share. I'm gonna get 10% of every sponsor that I bring to your company, to your club, or to your institution. So you can combine them. Okay, I'm gonna have a monthly fee that is not that high, but I'm gonna be working with you, generating materials, setting meetings, visiting potential brands, etc. So if we close an agreement with any of them, I'm gonna get a revenue share. So that way you have your business model, service-based business model. So you try to turn it into a product somehow. So you generate a monthly fee. You make sure that you're gonna make money enough to at least cover your expenses, for example, and then you're gonna make more money on this revenue share. And sometimes we need to think about the calendar of payments you're going to have. Sometimes an upfront payment. People is going to pay you some money before you start working, and maybe you're going to have a payment calendar. That's something you need to think about, because you're going to split the value into different moments, and that's very important, because if you want to eat food every day, you're going to need money every day. So if you're going to get paid in 6 months from now, you need to know to get ready, because otherwise you won't have money enough in your pocket. Okay. So how do we get to the project client cost or markup? How do we set the prices? Now I'm going to use an example of a self-employment business, okay? A company that is being run by the entrepreneur. Maybe you have also employees, but the logic would be the same if you have employees or not. But let's find it as if you were a freelancer, okay? So the first question: how much money do you want to make? If you imagine that you say, I want to make 100,000 a year for myself, okay? And I have to cover 300,000, I mean 3,000 euros a month on expenses, whatever they are, like renting the office or paying one salary or whatever. So there will be 36,000 a year. So you know that you need to generate 100,000 plus 36,000, 136,000 a year, right? Because you have to pay your expenses plus the amount of money you want to make. Now let's think about what can you sell. So if you're gonna sell your knowledge, you're gonna sell a certain amount of hours. In this case, I use an estimation of 250 days. Those are the working days in Spain. We're removing the weekends, we're removing like bank holidays, etc. So normally on average is around 250, between 250 and 260 in Spain. So if your company will be able to sell services during the weekend, you have more days. If you cannot sell every single day, you may have lower days. But let's get an average of 250 days, working days, and 60 hours per day. That's the amount of hours you can sell, not the amount of hours you can work, because you say, okay, a day has 24 hours, I can work 24 hours. Yeah, but you need to think about how many hours can you sell, can you charge your clients for that. For example, if you work as a lawyer, well, lawyers normally they charge for everything, and that's a smart thing to do. But I don't know, if you work as a physiotherapist, for example, you're gonna charge a certain amount of money for the therapy you are providing to your client, but you cannot charge for the amount of time it takes to you to review the story of the client, to prepare for the session, to talk to your colleagues, to see that have you seen this case, what do you think about, etc. All this time you're not gonna get paid for it, so you're gonna have to reflect all this time in the price, right? Somehow. So you're gonna have, in this case, 250 days, 6 hours per day. You're gonna have 1,500 hours per year as inventory, the amount of hours you can sell, right? So now it's so simple. If you have to generate at least 100,000 for yourself, 36,000 to pay your expenses, and you have 1,500 hours, how much do you need to get paid for every hour that you sell? At least 90 euros per hour. That's so simple. So of course, this is just a framework. You can change the variables. You can increase the amount of money you want to make. You can increase the amount of days. You can decrease the amount of hours. You can play with these numbers, and then it will take you to a number. So now you know the price, the minimum price you need to charge to make 100,000. But now let's think, okay, are you going to sell all your hours? Because if you're not going to be able to sell all your hours, you're not going to make 100,000. So maybe you need to work with these two. Maybe you said, okay, $90 is the price that I need to charge to make that money. but what's the market price? If I set this, maybe I have no clients because it's very expensive. Or maybe it's too low. Good news. If this is too low, you can go higher and then you will be better. So now you have the variable, the price you need to compare with competition, what we said before. Now you have the minimum because you need to cover the 100,000 you're gonna make, the 36,000 on expenses. You know the minimum, the maximum. It's one in this case. You know that it's limited by the amount of hours, so you now can increase the prices to get to see if you're able. Sometimes maybe you prefer to sell less hours instead of selling my 1,500 hours. I prefer to increase the price, so I'm gonna say low hours, but I'm gonna make the same amount of money. Think about it. If you charge the same amount of money, I mean, if you change a bigger amount of money, you need to sell less hours to generate the same amount. So you can dedicate maybe a bit more time with your clients. Maybe you can have a premium service and you don't need to be all day long working. Maybe you are selling only 5 hours per day, but the price is higher. So the rest of the time you're going to be working in marketing, you're going to be working in training yourself, you're going to be working in increasing the value perceived, so you can keep increasing the prices. So now you can, the problem with service-based is that the amount of hours you can sell is always limited, because a day only has 24 hours. You can sell, if you're crazy enough, you can sell 24, but no more. But if you increase prices, there is no limit to grow on that. So you need to work with the different variables, okay? Now, getting back to advertising, we're talking about revenues based on services. Now we're going to talk about advertising. Imagine that you want to build, in this, I brought the example of Ibai Llanos. In this case, is branded content. In this case, he was making a promo of Pepsi. The fun thing is that the reporter that was included in the promo, in the live content, instead of Pepsi, he said Coca-Cola. So the promo was gonna go low profile, like a branded content, low profile. But given the fact that that person went wrong and said Coca-Cola instead of Pepsi, it went viral. So the impact was so high. Some people said that it was a movement set by Ibai Llanos, right? Like he said to the person, said Coca-Cola instead of Pepsi. So that way we're gonna make this movement, whatever. So branded content means we're talking about sports in this case, okay? Because it was a reporter talking about sports. And at some point he said, okay, I'm going to have my Coca-Cola. Oh, sorry, my Pepsi. And then he went to the fridge, and then everybody was laughing. And Pepsi came out on Twitter and said, thank you for the advertising, even though he got a lapsus and said the wrong thing. So it went viral and the impact was so high. So branded content is trying to bring the brand inside the conversation, inside the content. The more natural way, the better. So you make money out of it. Brands are paying to be there. Compared to native, if you go to native, for example, this is another YouTuber. Native advertising is what's included in the platform itself. In this case, what's the platform? YouTube. If you generate content in YouTube, you can monetize, you can make money through all the advertising that's included. You have the pre-roll, the ads that you will see before you watch a video. The ones that saw during the video. In this case, you can turn off all ads now. This is an ad itself, right? So everything that is included in the platform is native. When you talked about something, that's branded, or when you wear a t-shirt with the brand, that's branded. People, the brand is paying to be there. Native is traded. So you normally, on the native ads, you don't decide. When you watch a YouTube video, the ad that goes before, the content generator has no idea what the content is there. They can say, okay, I don't want to have ads of this kind, but they have no idea what's going. And a fun thing is that if you watch a video yourself and you watch the same video in the phone of a friend, the ads of your friend will be different to yours because they have your profile and they're gonna target you with what's better for you. So that's a very interesting way for us to make money through content generation. You generate content in platforms, they have native formats for you to monetize. Okay, so monetizing, generate money through the revenue streams will be native ads in the platform that you're performing. If you are thinking about creating your own platform, imagine that you're building an app that you're going to have thousands or millions of users, and you want to place advertising inside your app, you're going to define the native advertising in your app, okay? Normally, I don't recommend to go that way. Why? Because you will need millions and millions of users coming recurrently to make money enough to be able to trade advertising yourself. Normally, you're going to bring this advertising from Google or Meta, and that's it. So you're never going to be able to build something big enough to compete with YouTube or something big enough to compete with Google. So if you're planning to create the next social media, the next Twitter or the next Facebook, I will think about it twice. Okay, maybe you should go somewhere else. Affiliate marketing is something that I wanted to mention too. Some creators said, okay, if you want to buy the product that I just mentioned, go on the description and click the link. In this case, all these links, if you see, there is so tiny, but it says Amazon. Those are affiliate on Amazon. You can buy these products. If you click there, they will take you to Amazon. And if you buy something using that link, Amazon is going to pay a percentage to the content creator. So that's what we call affiliate marketing. When you want somebody in Instagram saying, if you want to buy this product, use my code and you're going to get a 5% discount, or you're going to get somewhere. Sometimes, or normally, this code is not only giving you a discount, but it's also giving you a commission to the content creator. One thing that probably you've seen is that some creators from Instagram, for example, they're jumping to YouTube, and you say, what's the point? Because monetizing, YouTube has more native spaces to monetize than Instagram. In Instagram, you can see a lot of branded content, influencers talking about things that are happening, and people are paying them to perform in a certain way. But when you're in YouTube, you don't necessarily need to be branded to make money. You can talk about whatever you want. In this case, Jaime Altozano, that you see there, is talking about music. Nobody paid Jaime anything to create that video, but Jaime is going to make a lot of money because he's generating, it has more than 3 million subscribers. In this case, this video had more than 1.5 million of views. So they're going to be making money for a long time. For everybody that goes there, it's going to watch different ads, and this money is going to go directly to the pocket of the content creator. Okay. So other business model for digital products could be freemium. In this case, freemium, the most famous example, actually, who invented the freemium model is Spotify. Freemium combines free plus premium, meaning that you're going to have a free version, so you don't pay for it, and a premium one that you have to pay. In the case of Spotify, it's very easy, right? In the free version, it's free, but you have a lot of advertising. So Spotify is making money by selling the inventory of different ads to third parties, to brands. So brands are going to Spotify to target you. When you're listening to Spotify free, you're gonna have brands talking to you to say, buy my product, right? If you go on the premium side, you have no ads. And other thing they have is they limit the features that you can have in the free version. You cannot skip the song. You cannot listen to the same song more than once, etc. So they limit the features. So they try to motivate you to go premium, to pay for it. Okay, so that's a little bit what freemium is. I give you something for free, but if you want something better, you can go to premium. How can we see that in our industry, in the sports industry? Fantasy games. Fantasy games is very common. So you can have the regular app for free. So you can set your team, you can select players, you can do some features, but it will have a lot of advertising included, and some features will be limited. So if you want to have more features, or you want to go free of advertising, then you become premium and you pay for it, and you pay a subscription, and the company is very happy because they have a recurring client. Other thing we can do on freemium versions on the free side, and we see that a lot in gaming. Esports, we didn't mention, but esports has a lot to do with this. Esports is a big, very, very, very big industry, not only for what has to do with the esports itself, but everything that goes around it with gaming. So if you imagine that you have a game, of course you have the subscription, pay to play, but also you can make money through impressions, through marketing, which is called CPM or RPM, which is revenue per mile. So when monetizing advertising in these kind of platforms, you measure it in terms of how many thousands of people watch the content. Thousands of people. So imagine the amount of money they're paying is so tiny. So you need to have a lot of people involved in your platform. But also we can have micro payments, small payments you can do to have, not only because in the freemium, historically was you can have all the features or none of the features. Free, none of the features, or just a few. And premium, all of the features. But now we can have a freemium with some features, premium with a lot of features, and then we can have some extra features if you make some small payments. You can see that on Fortnite or other gaming, and this is generating a lot of money, because you can buy just small things inside the game, inside the ecosystem of whatever you build. So again, different revenue streams, and of course you need to set the pricing strategies on all of these revenue streams. Great. Let's skip now to what has to do with commerce. In commerce, we have two different models that I want to show to you, which is marketplace and e-commerce. What's the main difference between these two? But at the end of the day, is buying things online. Okay, for the client, is going somewhere in a website, finding a product and buying it. Marketplace. Marketplace is like a platform. You bring together sellers and buyers. That's your main goal. So you do a lot of marketing. If you want to build a marketplace, your budget will go to marketing. Bring in both. You have to bring a lot of brands and you have to bring a lot of people willing to buy products from these brands. The bigger marketplace in the US and Europe is Amazon, and in the rest of the world is Alibaba, you know, probably, or AliExpress, right? So these marketplaces, what they do is they bring both, and normally what they get is a commission. So if you buy a product, you will get a piece of it. The platform, the marketplace will get a piece of each transaction. So these models are what we said transactional. If you have a transaction, you get a piece of it. Normally, these commissions can jump from 5% to 20%, depending on how big you are, how valuable you are. Normally, it has to do with how dependent is the brand on your site. For example, Amazon has done very well because it has become, for many of the brands that are being sold in Amazon, the first source of clients. So if you have most of your clients coming through Amazon, if Amazon charges you 20%, probably you're going to be willing to pay, because otherwise you're going to lose a lot of clients, right? So depending on how big you are or how important you are for brands, the commission you can charge is high. In this case, Depot Village was not that big. It was a Spanish company that was acquired a while ago from a big group. What they were doing is selling sporting products from Garmin, Oakley, Mavic, Adidas, Asics, North Face. So of course they were not manufacturing their products. They were targeting athletes, and saying that, okay, if you want to find the best garments of the best clothing, etc., come here because we have everything you need. So they were able to target that niche, to generate demand, and to connect with the brand, so they get a commission. And on the other hand, we have the e-commerce. In this case, to simplify, you sell your own products. So it means that you have to manufacture, you have to have a warehouse to keep those products, you have to transport these products from one place to another. So you have a lot of things to do. So in this case, we have the example of On Running. We mentioned the other day, right? Do you remember? On Running is the company that reached the agreement with Roger Federer. It was historical. It is one of the highest growing startups in the field of sports. So e-commerce, what's the main difference? They manufacture their own shoes and they sell them. That's it. That's as simple as that. In the eyes of the client, it's similar, because you go somewhere, you find the product you want, and you buy. But in this case, you're buying directly to the brand, and in the other one, you're buying through an intermediator. And sometimes, if you have an e-commerce, you want to sell your products also through intermediaries. You can find On Running shoes in other platforms, because those are marketplaces. Why? Because On Running wants to sell as much as possible. If you go to a marketplace, you're going to have to pay the fee to that marketplace. So, of course, if you have your own product, you always prefer to sell directly, but sometimes you have to go to a marketplace. So how do we compare this in terms of the business model? To me, there are two main things to take into account. What has to do with margin, the amount of money you generate on each transaction. Of course, on e-commerce is higher because all the margin goes to you, right? You manufacture and you sell directly. But in the marketplace, you're going to get a piece of the margin of the seller. So at the end of the day, you're going to make less money, 100% sure. Of course, if you are Amazon, sometimes Amazon is making more money than some of the sellers, but that's very rare. It's only because you are the number one or you are the most relevant marketplace in the world. But on the other hand, you have risk in the marketplace. You have lower risk because you don't have inventories, you don't have to transport, you don't need to have a warehouse, etc. You're only invested in marketing. In the e-commerce, you're gonna have to invest in marketing too. But on the e-commerce, you have to do everything else. So the risk you have is higher. So now we can find examples of Decathlon and Amazon. Both were historically marketplaces, because if you went to Decathlon, you find it a lot of different brands similar to Amazon. But if you go to Decathlon nowadays, you're going to find most of the products inside one of these brands, meaning that Decathlon has been transitioning from e-commerce by selling their own products to transferring from marketplace, getting a piece of the sale. For example, when selling a product of Adidas, okay, they were getting a piece of the price. But now through Kalenji, Quechua, Kipsua, Tribor, etc., all these brands are owned by Decathlon, meaning that all the margin will go to Decathlon. Why? Because after all of these years generating a lot of transactions, they realized, okay, what's the point of making a little piece, just taking a little piece of the value compared to the amount of money that the brands are making. So now the bigger risk, which is having clients, I already have clients. So what's the point? I'm going to manufacture myself. Similar to what Amazon did. Amazon historically only sold products from third parties, from suppliers. Now you can find a lot of products sold directly by Amazon. One of the main lines is Amazon Basics. Amazon Basics, it's the e-commerce side of Amazon. So Amazon has the marketplace, which still is bigger, but they decided to jump into the e-commerce. Why? Because they're going to be able to make more money through e-commerce than through marketplace. And the risk of selling, now they don't have it. Why? Because they know, because they have all these years of transactions, and they know exactly the amount of pens they're going to sell next month, because they have been selling pens for a lot of years on the marketplace. So now if they sell their own pens, they're going to generate a lot of money, more than previously while using the marketplace side. Okay. Some other examples. I'm going to run a little bit, just these few at the end. I'm going to run because I want to leave some space at the end for questions. Okay, but if just some examples. Companies that sell very expensive products like this. Okay, you have Peloton, you have Tonal. Those two are not good examples because they kind of failed as companies. But I wanted to point out the business model, which is interesting. So they have a very high price. This is the price of the machine, the training machine at home. So they turn the e-commerce model. So I'm selling machines. Instead of selling machines, they turn it into a subscription model. The same thing with Peloton. Instead of acquiring the bike, at the beginning, the main goal was selling a lot of bikes, but then at some point they realized that selling bikes was very hard, so maybe they prefer to skip and okay, not generating that much money by selling the product, by giving you the product, and then charging you to this for the subscription. What's the these theories? It's called the razor and blades. So I sell you the razor to save, but if you don't have the blades, you cannot use it, right? So what's the point? So that's why companies give away a lot of razors, because you're gonna have to buy the blades, right? So it's similar to this. I'm gonna give you the product. So if I give you the machine for not that much, for a monthly subscription, but you don't pay the premium version to get access to it, what's the point? So you get the machine, and then later on you have to use it through a subscription base, right? Okay. In this case, I think Group is a success story. Group combines the best of both worlds, in my opinion, because they have the marketplace, what actually they combine three different business models, and that's nice, because they have the e-commerce, they sell their own products. The marketplace, they sell products of third parties. Even sometimes they brand the products themselves, but they are not theirs. They are manufactured by a third party, but they have the opportunity to brand them. So somehow it would be e-commerce. So they have marketplace, they have e-commerce, and they have the subscription base. And in this case, it's awesome because you can buy the wearable, but if you don't pay the subscription model, what's the point of having the wearable? Because there is no app, there is no software for you to use it. You only have the hardware. So that's why they decided to go with very low prices on the selling side, because they expect to generate money on the subscription on the subscription side. And what has to do with subscription, now we have a lot of different examples like these training machines. This is not only is the combination of the hardware and the software. In this case, they go to the subscription. Historically, if you wanted to have a machine or a software doing something for you, you had to acquire the whole software. Now you don't, you pay a subscription. And you can find different examples. In this case, you can have the training system at home, but if you don't pay the subscription, what's the point? So you sell the equipment, and also you charge and you make a lot of money recurrently with the subscription. Some other examples, and yeah, well, in this case, this is for golf and baseball, and this is for tennis. Some other examples that I don't want to go too far, because the business model is not that different to what we said, subscription or freemium version, so you can go deeper if you want. And just to end up here and leave space for questions, remember, first step, find opportunities. Once we have the opportunities, problems that need a solution are not properly solved, then we build those solutions. We find the solutions that can be built for us as entrepreneurs to satisfy customer needs. And then don't forget, you need to get paid for it, and you need to make money out of it, because we're talking about business ideas, business proposals. Of course, everything we said in the course is not that you're only going to apply this as entrepreneurs owning a business, but everything that has to do with entrepreneurship. In this case, the course is being focused on entrepreneurship in the business area, right? So I'm trying to give you examples of many different fields, many different industries, many different kind of businesses, because it's not the same having a small agency or a small clinic to provide your services as a physiotherapist or as a lawyer or whatever, than if you want to build a software company like Master or any of these ones that we saw, that you want to have a big base of users and you want to become a unicorn and a big company. So each of you will have to find a way. But I wanted to give you, I think today we mentioned, I counted the other day like 20, between 25 and 35 different revenue streams coming from different companies. So I hope this helps you, and it helps you to dig deeper in your ideas to find different revenue streams. Remember, you have to work on the pricing strategies, not only the revenue stream, but also how would you set the price, and getting insights on that. And that's it. Next time, we're going to talk about the last part of business, what has to do with finance, forecasting revenues, forecasting expenses, where to get the money from, and yeah, and how to build the P&L, profit and loss account, etc. And that's everything from my side today. Thank you very much for those connecting live. Now I'm going to stay with you in case you have questions. And for those connecting or watching the recordings, thank you again. Please feel free to reach me on that email for anything you need, or connect through LinkedIn. Of course, I will be more than happy to stay in touch. And that's it. Thank you very much. And let's see you next week with Pierre Joanin, founder of Group One and ex NBA executive. Yeah, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the last session together. In the coming days, you're going to receive the PDF with the guidelines of the project that I have been mentioning in every session. But that's it. Thank you very much, and see you soon.